Good morning, everyone. My name is Architect Ruchi Arora. I am working as an associate professor with Galgotias University. So I would be taking your vernacular architecture class. The name of the course is Vernacular Architecture. Module is 16. Course code is ARMO 2004. So the topic of today's presentation is Vernacular Architecture of Rajasthan. In the previous lecture, we have already discussed about vernacular architecture definition. So vernacular architecture, what it is. So architecture without architects is called vernacular architecture. Almost you can say 90% of the buildings in the world, ordinary buildings built by ordinary people, are thought to be vernacular. Buildings built with local materials by local residents using built by hand construction methods can create a lasting architecture that is specific to a particular place and culture. So vernacular architecture provides shelter and comfort with the evolution of craft passed down through generations. So these are the prerequisites of this particular lecture. First is to understand the role of vernacular architecture. What is vernacular architecture? Why it is important? What are the construction techniques we can use in vernacular architecture? Next is learning information on construction techniques. We have already discussed which can support the vernacular architecture. What are those construction techniques which can be considered in the vernacular architecture? Next is understanding the different zones of climate. There are different zones of climate available in India. What are those zones? So these are the course objectives of this particular lecture. First is the understanding the basic definitions of vernacular architecture. So what is the difference between vernacular and contemporary architecture? What is the basic difference between that? Then the types of buildings in vernacular architecture. What are different types of buildings available in the vernacular architecture? So these are the course objective of this particular lecture. So vernacular architecture of Rajasthan. Culturally, the Rajasthan is divided into the 5 states. So and these further 5 states are divided into the 9 regions. What are those 5 states? First is Ajmer state, then Hadoti, Dhundar, Wagad and Mewat. So these 5 states are divided into 9 regions. First is Marwar region. So this is the Marwar region. In this Palodi, Jaisalmer, Pokhran all comes into the Marwar region. Then is Shekhawati region, B region. Churu, Jhunjhunu, all these areas comes into the Shekhawati region. Then is Merwada region. This is the Merwada region. Meta, Nagaur, Krishnagat comes into the Merwada region. Then D is Dhundar region. So this is the Dhundar region. Then E is your Mewat region. This is Mewat region. So Rajgarh, Tiljara, Alwar all comes into the Dhundar region. Then E is Mewat region. This is Mewat region. Then Godwad, F region, Pali, Sirohi all comes into the Godwad region. Then G, Mewar region. So here it comes the G region, Udaipur, Chittor, Basalbegan, Nathwada all comes into the Mewar region. Then H is Hadoti region. This is Hadoti region, Kota, Bundi. So next is I, Wagad region. Wagad region. So these are the 9 regions into which the Rajasthan is divided. So Rajasthan can be divided broadly into the arid, semi-arid and sub-humid regions. And different vernacular architecture styles are evolved in these climatically different regions with the help of locally available resources and construction materials. So now we are moving ahead towards the Shekhawati regions, as we have already discussed. The Churu, Jhunjhunu, Nawalgarh, Sikar, Shahpura, Lakshmangarh, Fatehpur, all these regions comes into the Shekhawati region. Basically, this is the Shekhawati region, as you can see in this particular map. This is the map of the Jaipur state in 1929. So the cultural landscape of the Shekhawati was shaped by the 3 factors, that is political, then economic obviously, then the creative forces. So the prevailing political conditions, trade activity existed around the region. Then the exposure to the creative expression in the Rajput courts, that is influenced by the Mughals, so brought into existence a unique heritage, built heritage. So it is this area is rich in heritage. So due to the fact that it was influenced by the Mughals. So traditionally, as an administrative entity, Shekhawati was comprised of the western part of Sikar, we have already discussed, and all of Jhunjhunu district, then bordered by the Bikaner and the Jaipur states. So cultural boundaries, however, extend beyond the administrative borders, bringing Churu within its fold as well. So these are the 10 regions of Shekhawati region. So these are the first one is the Churu, then Ramgarh of Shekhawati. So this is the Ramgarh region, then Bisau region, then Mahansar, Fatehpur, then Mandwa, Mandwa region, then Jhunjhunu region, then Lakshmangarh region, then Dhunlod region, then Nawalgarh region. So these are basically the point of interest in the Shekhawati region. So let us talk about the historical planning of the Shekhawati regions. So earlier the towns in Shekhawati were ruled by the Kayam Khani Nawabs. So they basically followed an organic pattern of growth with you can say that winding narrow streets punctuated by the chowks and the open public spaces. So there existed a distinct hierarchy of the spaces in the towns. Basically, towns formed under the rule of Shekhawat rulers followed a more or less grid layout pattern. You can see in the sketch in the map. Basically, the layout was grid layout, being greatly influenced by the planning of Jaipur. Similar to the Jaipur, it was greatly influenced by the planning of Jaipur. Then the narrow streets were lined built to edge buildings. So these buildings were placed along the edges of the streets, followed a grid iron pattern. So next is morphology and the urban features. Morphology is basically the shape of the that particular region and what are the existing urban features there. So first is Garh. Garh is basically a fort built at a strategic location, preferably at a higher plinth level than the rest of the surrounding area, forming the nucleus of the town. Basically, it is the central of the coast. So this is the fort area in the central portion. Next is Diva. That is the close to the fort. Diva is basically close to the fort. Then Bazaar. Bazaar is the main street of the town which is leading to the fort, functioned as a commercial spine of that particular region. So Bazaar is the commercial spine of that particular region. Then Gully is the narrow streets. So these are the gullies. These are the narrow streets that is lined with built to edge. Then buildings are placed along that street. So Burj is basically the fortified walls enforced with bastions and the crenellations. So this is the you can say that the Burj area, this is the fortification of that particular fort. Then Darwaza are the gateways built mostly leading towards the cardinal axis. These are placed according to the cardinal axis. Then Mandir is basically the temple of the principal deity of the ruling family, which is built in the that particular campus. Then Mohalla is the people of the similar caste which are living together, similar caste, or you can say that the professional affiliation like carpenters, like jewelers. So affiliation living together as a close knit group. They were living together. So Havelis are basically the merchant residences, the residences of the prime people, formed the bulk of the built environment. So this is the plan schematic representation of the Jhunjhunu region. So this is the legend according to that this particular region is divided. This is the fort region, then this is the temple, then these are the street pattern there, then these are the residential areas. This is the this is the boundary of that particular region. Then Dukan is the shop as its names indicates. Then Dharamshala is is the Caravanserai, which is used by the visitors or travelers there to stay. Then Chhatri is the cenotaph. Baithak is the reception space for welcoming the guest. Then Gaushala is for cattle shelter, and Bagichi is there. Bagichi is like pleasure garden, which was used by the kings to spend the leisure time there. Then Bagichi formed an integral part of the fabric of a typical Shekhawati region. So these are the special organization of urban features of Nawalgarh, which existed in the Shekhawati region. So this is the plan. So basically, these are the streets. Streets are basically the interaction spaces of that particular Nawalgarh region. Then these are the nodes as public amenity spaces. Then interface with the public domain. Then semi-private spaces, or you can say that the chalk of the Havelis. Then if you look at this plan, so this is the Darwaja to the main fort, then this is the Dharamshala, then this area is the Chhatri region, then this is the Kuan, then this in this side, this is the Bagichi, the garden space, then this is the temple for the religious purposes, then this is the Haveli, then this is the Chhatri, then this is the Mandir. So this is the Darwaza or this is the Diwar of this particular region. So these are the spaces which exist in the Nawalgarh region. So this is the Darwaza to the fort. So these are the spaces inside one region. So next we are talking about the regional architectural identity of that Shekhawati regions. So most of the Shekhawati towns have a fort or garh. We have already discussed in the center of the town. So in the center of the town, the garh or fort exists with habitation all around this fort. So the majority of the forts in the Shekhawati regions came into existence after the Shekhawats gained control over the Jhunjhunu part and the Fatehpur. We are talking about the 1730s. So each was built by the Thakurs, or you can say that the barons, as his administrative and residential base to protect his holdings. So several forts are destroyed by the Shekhawati brigade in 1830s to end the prevalent banditry in the region. So this is the example of the Shekhawati region's fort. You can say that the Mahansar fort. So basically the Shekhawats gained control over the Jhunjhunu and the Fatehpur in 1730s. So, Mahal was the seat of the royal residence of the Thakurs, or you can say that the Shekhawats. Then they were mostly constructed as a part of the fort, but sometimes could be the independent structures, as in the case of the Jhunjhunu. So they had separate chambers for the royal ladies, basically a hall for the public audience, along with other structures such as to house the royal paraphernalia. They basically formed a district landmark on the skyline of the town. So these are royal, like magnificent forts, like Mahansar fort, Mandwa fort, then Jhunjhunu, Khetri and Sikar boast of some of the fine palaces. So these are the example of some of the palaces. Jhunjhunu once boasted of 9 palaces, and even today Mohalla in the town is also known as the Nau Mahal. 9 palaces existed in the Jhunjhunu region. Later, these palaces show colonial influence both in the terms of planning and as well as the architectural vocabulary, as in the case of Roop Niwas Kothi at Nawalgarh. So these are the sketches of some of the important features of this Shekhawati region. So this is the Darwaja, which is called the entrance gateway, and this is the Diwar, which is called also known as the fortification wall, and this is the Burj of these palaces, which is also called bastion, constituted the elaborate defenses of a Shekhawati region. Then this is the Haveli, which is defined as basically the private space of the people, you can say that the kings, and the dominated the landscape of Shekhawati towns. So its built form continuously evolved over the years. So basically there are other factors which are responsible for shaping these Havelis. So let us discuss about the different components of a Haveli. So this is the sketch of a Haveli existed in the Shekhawati regions. So what are the different components of a Haveli? Let us discuss. So this is the entrance, which is also known as Toran, Dwar, entrance to any Haveli. Then these two cubical boxes are called the Gokhas. Gokhas is basically arched space with pillars. Then this is the outer police, which is also called the outer transitional space to the outer chalk. Then next is this is called the outer chalk, which is also called the outer court. Then next is the bathak. So these are called the bathaks. These portion as the bathaks, basically the reception space, or you can say that the drawing room. Then this is the inner poli. Inner poli is basically inner transitional space. Then this is the inner chalk, which is also known as the inner court. Then this is the tibri, which is also called the covered space, semi-covered space. This one, these are the tibris. Then sal are basically the rooms surrounded by these. These are rooms for which could be used for the storage purpose or the sleeping purpose. Then is the then next is the nisharni. Nisharni is basically the staircases which are leading you towards the upper storage. Then is the parinda. Parinda is basically the water tank, or you can say that the water storage space for this Haveli. Then is the next is the you can say that the sal, or you can say that the sal is basically a room. Then is these are the rasodas. Rasodas is basically a kitchen which is used for the cooking purpose. So the Haveli or residence define the private space. So a private space of the people and form the bulk of the properties in a town. So Havelis have a common architectural pattern. All the Havelis have a common architectural pattern, whether it is existing in the Mewar region or it is existing in the Shekhawati regions. They have a similar pattern which serves the purpose. What is the purpose of a Haveli? First is very important: utility, the use, then the durability, then safety, and of course the aesthetic purpose. So in its simplest form, a Haveli comprises of majorly a central courtyard with a high building mass all around. So basically Havelis can have more than two courtyard, as you can see in this plan. So it has two courtyard. It could have more than two courtyard. So the main entrance, or Toran Dwar, was raised on a plinth. So it is raised on some plinth defined by a huge gateway with two gokhas. Gokhas is basically the arched shape space with pillars. So basically entrance hall, so provided access to the Haveli. So the outer poli, or you can say that the transitional space which leads to the outer chonk, having a better on the either side, used as a reception or and a sitting room. So inner poli leads to the inner chonk. Outer poli leads to the outer chonk, and the inner poli leads to the inner chonk, having several set of rooms known as sal, which is attached to the semi-covered space which is known as tibari, or rasoi or kitchen, and a parinda. Or parinda is also called the water room, which are arranged around the inner chonk. So there was a separate room where images of the family deities were kept for daily worship, basically a worship area. So center of the court had a small square. So center of a courtyard had a small square which was kept kacha for draining the water, and at times had the tulsi chora, sacred basil, which is a plant which is used for the worshipping. So nisharni, which is called the stairs, which is provided at the provided access to the upper floor. So this is called the you can say that the nisharni. Then the upper story consisted of the bigger rooms. So upper story is having the bigger rooms which were sometimes beautifully painted. So small storage spaces were there. small storage spaces are provided which are called duchati, were included in the rooms. So rooms are provided with the small storage spaces which are called the duchati. Then the chat or the terrace, chat or terrace had a small structures for storing bedding. For sleeping on the terrace, if you want to sleep on the terrace, so there would be some small storage space over the terrace, which is used to store the beddings. Then a separate nohra is basically a space for the facilities like keeping domestic animals and small and rooms for the servant, or you can say that to accommodate the guest was also a part of the haveli. So the as we have already discussed in the previous slides, so these are the basic components of a Havelis, like entrance toran, then gokhas, then the you can say that the outer police, then the outer court, then the inner poli, inner court, then the rasodos, then baithaks, then the sal, then the tibers, nisharnis are basically the staircases. Then these are the components. So basically Haveli has a distinct segregation of the activities. So there are different activities which take place in a Haveli. So the type of role assigned to the family members govern the activity pattern. So it depends upon the type of role which is given to the each member of that Haveli. So on that members, this pattern depends. So men remained outside for most part of the day, engaged in a business, while women spend the entire day indoors. So they use basically the indoor courts, and the men they spend majorly their time in the outdoors. So they stay in the outer police. So thus the outer chowk of the Haveli was the men's activity area, as I have already told you, while the inner chowk was associated with the open. So semi-open and covered spaces was the center of the women's activities basically. So this is the sketch of a Toran Dwar. Then this is the outer poli which is leading to the outer court. Then this is the sketch of a baithak. Then this is the sketch of a outer chowk. So next important component of any Haveli is Nohra. Nohra is basically a service area. So it had a space for camels, cattle, and it is also used for storing their fodder. So it was an integral part of the lives of the people. So most of the time it formed a part of a Haveli as an attached open space with a separate entry gate. Near the main entrance there would be a separate entry to the Nohra, gateway of the Haveli, equally decorated with frescoes. So some more elaborate ones had a few rooms also. Other than the attached ones, there also existed a separate one. So these are the basically Nohra, which had a space for camels, cattle for storing their fodder. So this is Nohra. So next very important component of Haveli is chalk. So basically the build form of the Haveli continuously evolved. So depending upon the affluence and basically the economical status of a family and the size of the family, the number of chowks or courts in the Havelis varied. So there exist Havelis with 1, 2, 3 and 4 courts. So if you look at the sketch, it is having 3 courts. However, 1 and 2 chowks Havelis are most in common generally. So this Haveli is having 4 chowks, this Haveli is having 2 chowk, this is 1 chowk Haveli. So so this is the conceptual layout of different configuration of a chowk in a Haveli. So this is the chowk. So next important component of Haveli is double Haveli. Basically the double Haveli forms a very unique and residential typology. So in the later times experimentation led to a new concept of double Havelis, where two identical Havelis were built together. So these are the two identical Havelis which were exactly built together. So the two Havelis shared a common forecourt. So forecourt will be common between the two Havelis. Then these two have a separate baithaks. then and had independent inner courts are different. So these Havelis are having independent inner courts. No, not only were the architectural features, all the architectural features were exactly mirrored. Sometimes even the paintings which were existing in one Haveli is exactly mirrored on the other side of the other Haveli as well. So the double Haveli forms a very unique and residential typology. So next, so this is the sketch, basically a single chhatri with rooms below. So this is the chhatri. You can say that this is the chhatri. Then single chhatri, then double chhatri, then four chhatri with a room below. So, so we are just completed with the Shekhawati region. So these are some of the questions for the assignment. First question is the write the broad typologies of a vernacular buildings. Then classify the vernacular style in architecture of Rajasthan. Then third question is name any two pioneers of vernacular architecture. So these are some of the references which you can go through. So thank you for listening, students.